Well, it's been a dramatic night for Chicago's historic mayoral election.
Paul Vallas and Brandon Johnson have been neck and neck all night, but now Johnson seems to be stretching for the lead.
That's right. Right now, as we look at the numbers, Brandon Johnson approximately 13,000 votes ahead of Paul Vallas, with 95% of the vote reporting.
Yes, and as you can see, those numbers are close, but Brandon Johnson in the lead. The crowd buzzing tonight at Johnson headquarters, of course.
And that's where we find Nate Rogers. Nate, what are you hearing there, my friend?
Oh my God, Corey and Don, I'm trying to hear you all, because when I tell you it's electrifying in here, it is indeed full of energy. A lot of people here. Todd is going to show you just everybody that's in the room right now. We're talking about educators, college students, police officers, city council members, other lawmakers, and elected officials. And as one person put it, old-time Chicagoans, they're expecting some 1,800 supporters of Brandon Johnson to enter the room. Johnson, we do know, is at the Marriott Marquis right now. He is about to come down, we're told, and hit the stage possibly within the next 20 or 30 minutes or so. But for over the last 20 minutes or so, we've seen nothing but a lot of folks hugging, crying, screaming. You got to remember, at one time, polls showed Brandon coming in at some 2.3%. And even though the latest polls reflected that Paul Vallas was in the lead by just a small margin, Brandon Johnson told us that he was faithful that he would get to the 5th floor. And so right now we spoke to Alderman Pat Dow, who's here. We spoke to Illinois Attorney General Mayoral, who is here. So many other elected officials entering the room right now to support Brandon Johnson in this historical win, as he is still hoping to declare that victory in just a short time. Again, we're waiting for him to come down to the ballroom here just to greet some of his relatives. We do understand that his wife, of course, is along with him, and his 3 children. His father is here, his pastor, and so many of his other supporters. And really just to talk about the energy that's in the room. I've been going around in between our breaks just talking to people, just to get a sense of who's exactly here. I spoke to one 15-year-old who was here, who's following Johnson, who's been following him along the campaign route. I asked him, what was it about him that interested him? He said, well, his mother, his aunt, and an uncle were all educators. And if you ask Brandon Johnson what was his secret in mobilizing people to the polls, he said it was focusing on young people and progressives. And just by the results that we've seen so far, that appears to have been how he is ahead, if you will. And so that is the latest here at the Marriott Marquis, of course. As soon as he comes down to the stage to speak to and greet his supporters, of course, we will let you know. In this upload, Nate Rogers, Fox 32, Chicago.
All right, Nate, thank you. An excited crowd at Paul Vallas headquarters, stunned tonight right now.
That's right. Our Dane Placco is there at the Hyatt downtown tonight with the latest reaction. Dane, set the scene for us, sir.
Yeah, it has been a night of waiting and unexpected tension here at Paul Vallas' campaign headquarters. That early lead he had dissolved about 45 minutes after the polls closed. Let's take a look at the room right now. I want to show you what's going on right here. About 300 or 400 supporters filling the ballroom here at the Hyatt Regency downtown. Among them, many of the elected leaders who threw their support behind Vallas, including several city council members. Vallas' campaign strategists are busy pushing pencils, doing the math right now on that huge tranche of mail-in ballots that still have not come in. Earlier in the day, campaign officials told me they believe the late mail-in vote would favor Brandon Johnson. The logic being that it's coming from younger voters who tend to wait until the last minute to mail in their ballots and are more likely to vote for the progressive in the race. That was the case in the primary 5 weeks ago. All right, we're joined now by Tom Seraphin, a political consultant and political strategist who is here among the crowd tonight. Tom, what do you think? It's neck and neck right now.
Yeah, it's a dead heat. You know, it's going to be a few days before you figure out on the mail-in ballots, those that were checked and postmarked by 7 o'clock tonight will be counted Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, you know, and then that will be the result. But right now, people on the inside are saying that's very, very close. So Brandon looks in a pretty good spot right now.
Yeah, the conventional wisdom, as I said moments ago, is that the late mail-in ballots are going to be coming from younger people and will tend to break more in favor of Brandon Johnson. Is that what you're hearing as well?
Yes, I have. But the Vallas campaign had a pretty good mail operation. Brian and Trippy and those guys did a nice job in getting their act together. Now, you don't know, usually 52% of those ballots come in on time. The outstanding number is around 95,000. So 52%, you're looking 44,000. We don't know if that's going to be higher or lower, but that's the average right now.
And we know the way the post office works here in Chicago. It could be a while before we know anything.
Well, we will, but they've been very good at the Board of Elections on counting. This is not going to be a long time. But then if you get 8,000, 5,000, 6,000 difference between the two candidates, then you're going to have probably a question of whether or not people go back and check the balloting again. You have a recount. And you can do that, if you're within 5%. So a recount is a very real thing right now, depending on who's up and who's down. Very close race. But the edge right now you'd have to give to Brandon.
You surprised?
Yes, I am. I'm surprised that the lakefront wards, up on the north side, a lot of Caucasians, a lot of women, it seemed to be they broke more for Brandon than they did with Paul Vallas. But Brandon Johnson did a nice job up there in the primary. If you take a look at his primary numbers all along the lakefront, he had a good turnout.
Yep.
He built on that turnout, that what they call the progressive crowd up there, the Caucasians. He did well with the African Americans. Paul Vallas did. He did well with the Latinos. He did well in the southwest, northwest side.
Right.
But that lakefront crowd might be the difference.
All right, Tom Seraphin, thanks for those wise words.
Good to see you.
Good to see you, too. As for Paul Vallas himself, we know he's here at the hotel with his family upstairs. We haven't heard anything from his campaign staff about when he may be coming down here to speak, as we were just saying it's very unlikely there will be, this race is going to be called tonight, but at some point you would expect Vallas is going to be speaking to the 300 or 400 supporters here in the room. Back to you.
All right, Dane Placco, thank you. Let's bring in political editor Mike Flannery. Mike.
Hey, well, Dawn, I think that indeed it is good to be Brandon Johnson given the political situation right now. There are a number of people around town who believe this race is actually over, that Brandon Johnson is likely to win by several percentage points. I wonder if we could talk to Matt Podgorski, our political consultant who was with us earlier on our webcast. So, Matt, how did Brandon Johnson build this lead? And it's a commanding lead, I think you agree.
Yeah, no, it is. And looking at exit polling, I think it's clear Brandon Johnson did very well amongst the black community, very well with the younger voters, and he kept the margins tight within white voting, the white voting bloc. He's going to end up only losing the white vote by about 10%. And that's enough to, to hold off Paul Vallas, it looks like, based on what we've seen so far.
So based on the numbers that you've crunched, it appears that Brandon Johnson's getting 70 to 73% of the black vote. He's getting as much as 45% of the white vote. And while he lost the Hispanic vote, overwhelmingly, only got about 30% of Hispanics, they actually they turned out in very small numbers today.
Yeah, it just wasn't enough to make the difference. And as you see right now, Brandon Johnson's holding a 12,672 vote lead right this minute. The only remaining questions now are there's about 5% of the vote still left to be counted tonight with 95% of the precincts reporting. We really don't know which way that's going to break. And then, of course, the infamous late vote by mail ballots, which we think are going to go for Johnson. We just don't know how many votes. So at the end of the day, it's just math. Things are obviously looking very much in Johnson's favor right now. There's no way to deny that.
And indeed, there are others. There's a young political consultant I've come to know recently, Frank Calabrese. He's saying that it's over, that Brandon Johnson is going to be sworn in May 15th as the next mayor of Chicago.
Frank could be right. I'm just doing the math. I'm not making the.
This is why we count the votes, here. Right? Yeah, you're saying
I'm not making the normative judgments today. Yeah, I'm just kind of doing the math. But yeah, right now it's not mathematically over, but Johnson's in the driver's seat.
He's got a commanding lead, absolutely. So, guys, should we take a look at the city council?
Well, before we do so, Mike, I just real quick, the latest 97% reporting now, and the margin remains about 13,000, right?
Yeah.
So before we go on to the aldermanic, Mike, I mean, 3 or 4 months ago, 95% of Chicago had never heard of Brandon Johnson before, and here we are, and it looks like the race has been won.
Well, and while those of us of a certain age remember Paul Vallas as the CEO of the Chicago Public Schools, he left that post in the 1990s, and in fact, Matt Podgorski will tell you in some of his polling among voters under 30 or under 35, more than 50% of them did not know who Paul Vallas was. So it was a chance for each side to try to define the other, and certainly the millions of dollars the teachers union put into this in an audacious bid to put one of their own, an organizer and lobbyist, in the mayor's office. It certainly right now looks to be on the way to great success.
All right, Mike, let's talk about the aldermanic races, because there are a few that you wanted to highlight tonight.
Yes. Let's take a look at this. If Brandon Johnson is the next mayor, he'll have to deal with the city council. So let's take a look at the 10th ward, where Peter Chico, grandson of a steel worker union leader down in that far southeast side 10th ward, he's got a commanding lead. It looks like he's put this one to bed over Ana Guajardo. And let's take a look at the 11th ward now, where NICOLE Lee appears to have put this one to bed with a lead of 62% to 38% over Chicago police officer Anthony Sharavino. Lee had been endorsed by and had endorsed Paul Vallas. We'd have to see how she's going to line up if it is a Mayor Brandon Johnson. And let's look at the next wards. We'll just whistle through these. And incumbent Chris Taliaferro has a lead of 12 votes over C.B. Johnson, his challenger. That is one that's going to have to wait until we get all the votes in and all the vote-by-mail ballots arrive. Taliaferro, a longtime Chicago police sergeant, a big outspoken leader of police reform in the city council. And the next race is the 30th ward, where Ruth Cruz has a lead, and it's maybe enough to hold up over Jessica Gutierrez, the daughter of former Congressman Luis Gutierrez. And in the 36th ward, we've got Gil Villegas, who appears to have put Lori Torres-Witt, Lori Torres-Witt. He appears to have defeated her pretty thumpingly. She's on the executive board of the Chicago Teachers Union. Villegas, the chair of the City Council Latino Caucus. All right, the 46th ward now. Angela Clay seems to have put this one to bed. She is going to be a vote in the City Council in favor of what a Mayor Brandon Johnson would be proposing. Very much in the Brandon Johnson camp, defeating Kim Walz here, it appears.